Welcome to the Clark Broadcasting Candidates Forum featuring the California Senate District 4 race. I'm BJ Hanson, your moderator. Well, as part of redistricting, the new Senate District 4 seat covers all or parts of the counties of Tuolumne, Calaveras, Mono, Alpine, Inyo, Stanislaus, Nevada, Placer, El Dorado, Amador, Merced, and Madera. The Mother Lode area has been represented by Republicans in the California Senate over recent decades, but next year it will be a Democrat as the top two vote getters in the June primary were Tim Robertson and Marie Alvarado Gil. It is unique that no incumbent is running in the race, so it is wide open. Today is a chance to learn more about the two candidates, where they stand on the issues facing the region and state. And we initially planned to have both candidates in studio together. Marie Alvarado Gil did have a little bit of a family emergency, so she's running a little bit behind. So how it's going to work tonight is we're going to hear first from Tim Robertson during the first part, and then the second part we're going to hear from Marie Alvarado Gil. The candidates will have the same format, and they will answer the same questions, and they didn't know the answer or the questions ahead of time. So we're going to start first with opening statements, and Tim Robertson is the first candidate with us today, so time for opening statements.
Well, thank you so much, BJ. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. And also thank you to all the listeners out there who are learning a little bit more about this really important race for state senate. My name is Tim Robertson. I'm one of the two candidates remaining running for state senate District 4, which you did a great job explaining the geography of this district. It is a very large district, but we have had a really good time getting out there and talking to folks in every corner of it. And what we found is that people are tired of politics as usual. What I've done in my whole career is bringing people together, trying to focus on the truth, on the goals that we share as community members, regardless of what party you're in. And as we've gone to every corner of this district, we've been excited to know that Democrats and Republicans and independents have all really appreciated hearing about our efforts to try to bring people together and bring productive representation to this district. And representation really is what this is about. In this district, as you mentioned, it is frequently represented by Republicans, and we do have a little bit over a third of the voters are Republicans, about a third of them are Democrats, about a third are independents. I saw that as an opportunity for us to really try to break through these partisan divisions that have been so challenging to our political discussion and the things that we've been trying to accomplish. Especially in Sacramento, that is heavily controlled by Democrats, we see this as a really good opportunity to bring new resources to this district, connect folks that have felt as though they haven't had a voice in Sacramento for one reason or another, be it individuals or small business owners or small local agencies, to really be that conduit, that two-way street between Sacramento and the policies that they're making there and the experiences that people have in the local area here. I have a lot of experience doing this type of work in bipartisan manners. I sit on several workforce development boards and have been really active in trying to invest and create the jobs of the futures, working with businesses and community agencies to do that. Also have a great deal of experience working in economic development and trying to figure out new ways that we can invest in our communities to create better jobs and invest in our businesses, invest in our small businesses so that we can grow our economies and include and have good jobs as well. So all of this work has led me to believe that I'm very qualified to have this seat and raise the stakes throughout this district to continue to create better jobs that have health care, bring costs down, make sure that we have access to affordable housing. And have the secure retirement and all of the other things that our families need. Because of that, I have a long list of endorsements, including 13 county supervisors from throughout the district, including 2 right here where we're recording in Tuolumne County. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're talking to Tim Robertson, the first candidate for Senate District 4. And the first question I'm going to ask you about is in regards to fire. The Sierra Nevada and the foothills communities are often among the highest for fire risk in the state. From a perspective of state senator, what do you think can be done for this region to become more fire resilient?
Great question, and a lot. We have, so first of all, I'm endorsed by the CAL FIRE firefighters because we have a great plan on how to work with our communities, work with local fire agencies, work with local water agencies, and bring the kind of state support that we need to prepare our communities for increasing fire risk. We need to invest in a lot of things, including home hardening, defensible spaces, fuels reduction, fuels breaks, and hardening our water system to make sure that we have all of the tools that our communities need to stop these massive wildfires from happening. Now, we've started that. About $600 million in state funds has come through in the last year or so to help do that. But it's more than just funding. We really need to continue organizing our communities, developing the workforce, developing these plans, and making sure that first and foremost, when we have wildfires, we have the tools and we have the preparation to make sure that they aren't these massive million-acre wildfire events that are so deeply challenging for our communities. Beyond that, we need to, as we're investing in our communities and our homes and home hardening and defensible spaces, we have to make sure that we're controlling fire insurance premiums. It is, don't have to tell you, but fire insurance premiums are out of hand. It is all but impossible to affordably insure your homes for fire. When we're investing in all of these things that are going to help save our homes, save our communities, like home hardening and defensible spaces, water systems, and fuels reduction, we need to make sure that that's connected to fire insurance rates. If we're going to be investing in all of those things that are going to make our homes and our communities safer, we need to make sure that we're also not having to pay these exorbitant fire insurance rates. So all of that together, as I said, I'm endorsed by not only the CAL FIRE firefighters, but the statewide firefighters as well, because we want to work together to move forward on fire mitigation.
Thank you. The next question is in regards to homelessness. That's an issue all across this district, whether it be the foothills or the Central Valley. What do you feel is the best approach to address the issue of homelessness?
Great question. So one of the challenges that I see with Sacramento is that every couple of years there's a new plan and a new press conference and a new idea on how we're going to solve big issues like homelessness. And it often doesn't take into account what folks are doing on the local level. And it also might be a little bit short-sighted. The 2-year plan might not get it. Frankly, there's a lot of economic challenges, a lot of societal challenges that we have right now. We're more than 2 years away from solving our homelessness crisis. So what I want to see is a 10-year plan, a 15-year plan that looks at a lot of different things. We want to continue to do drug treatment. We want to do mental health services, make sure that we're getting the critical care that people that are on the street right now need. We also want to make sure that those that are kind of in transitional homelessness, living in their cars, living on a couch, that we have an increased job infrastructure and increased housing. Like all of those things in and of themselves are challenges. But what we need to do is my kind of main idea is that we need to continue to develop the jobs in our community and also developing the housing supply. So if we work on the mental health challenges that some folks are facing, as well as improving our economy, improving affordability, improving the quality of jobs, and making sure that we're increasing housing supply, all of those are really big questions in and of themselves. But because all of these things are important to alleviating our homelessness crisis, we have to have full plans on how we do each of these things because it's not just going to be one piece, a simple solution here. We've got a lot of work to do. And when I'm going to be in Sacramento, we're going to be able to do it.
Moving on from homelessness to housing in general, and you touched on this a little bit in your last answer, but do you feel there are specific things that could be done to make it easier to build more houses in the state of California?
Yeah, I think there's so coming from Sacramento, just this year we passed a bill that's going to make it, or not we, I will be there, but they passed a bill that's going to make it easier, kind of cut the red tape to turn kind of abandoned retail establishments into housing. So that's a great idea. I know that there are kind of retail strips right around here that are all but empty, and figuring out ways to use existing structures, bring in the kind of workforce that we need to turn those into housing. That's step one. We got to work with local communities as well, as we need to as we need to work through zoning and permitting and all of those issues as well. We want to make that as easy as possible. Again, we would like to get, so state funding is gonna be coming for the development of new housing. As the senator representing Senate District 4, we want to bring as much of that. I want to bring as much of that as possible to the communities that need it the most here in this district. Now that'll take work on the ground as well, because folks have to want it, and we also have this kind of other aspect where people maybe they don't want new housing development, and we have to work with these folks and build the kind of connections and have the kind of dialogue that challenges that you're facing around housing insecurity or home prices being too high are directly related to the supply of housing in communities, and if we really want to work on getting housing prices down, we have to increase the supply as well. As I said, I have spent a career out of working with folks on both sides of every issue, regardless of party, regardless of interest. And I think the more conversations we have about these real challenges that are facing our communities, the better we're going to be able to solve them.
Next question is in regards to the economy and specifically the local economic health of the district. What are kind of your observations, and are there any things that you feel that the state can do to help this area?
Yeah, this is something that's really exciting to me, BJ. As we mentioned earlier, the dynamics of this race and the dynamics of this district, the state is always putting out these massive business development grants or other kind of funding that help local communities develop a new business infrastructure, help develop transportation infrastructure, housing infrastructure, you name it. For a variety of reasons, those funds don't get to rural communities the way they do to some of the more coastal communities. There's political reasons for that. There's been, as you mentioned, the folks who've been representing this district may or may not been interested or be able to access those funds. But we've really looked into what it would take for local communities to receive these types of funding. So one of the challenges is that some of our local agencies, government agencies, just don't have the staff to write a grant. And if they do get the grant, they don't have program staff to run it. We hear this everywhere. And as grants are being distributed in California, they end up heavily going to the rest of the state. I have been speaking with senators already in Sacramento about ways that we can alleviate this. And we have an understanding that we need to invest in technical assistance and staffing at the state level to make sure that that smaller rural communities aren't left behind. Our needs on all of these economic development and housing development issues are just as important, and in many cases more so than those in the rest of the state. And as we're making the legislation, in the very beginning, we need to make sure that it is accessible to rural communities, and that's something that I'm committed to doing.
Next question is in regards to, high gas prices and the inflation. Are there any actions that you think could be done in response to it?
Yeah, we got to bring prices down. Everything is expensive right now. Inflation is as high as it's been in 40 years. Gas prices are high as well. There are, folks are struggling. I think that, there's a couple things that are going through the state right now. We have rebates that are coming to folks that should hopefully help. I think they should be hitting mailboxes right about now. And making sure that, that we're doing everything we can to help folks get by. The challenge, and what I really want to talk about, is the long-term solution to this. My campaign, Robertson for Senate, is about figuring out ways that we can broadly improve the economic conditions of the working family through improved job quality, through better resourcing our schools, ensuring that we have job training programs and the ability to find better work, and investing in businesses so that they can create better jobs as well. Over time, we want to make it so that all of our communities aren't living that too many of our working families aren't kind of living on that razor's edge, where a increase in cost is something that folks are not prepared for. So So there's a real concerns and prices, and we need to do things to lower prices right now. But in the long run, we need to make it so that our economies have a fair shot at economic security.
Talking with Tim Robertson during this first segment of the California Senate District 4 Forum. Later on, we'll be talking with Marie Alvarado Gil. Tim Robertson again during this first part. Tim, next question I want to ask you about is in regards to the governor's directive to phase out gas-powered cars by 2035. I'm curious your opinions on that and if you feel it's realistic.
I don't know if it's realistic. I think it's a set a goal, and it's, to be clear, I think it's phasing out the sale of new gas-powered cars by 2035. I think moving to electric vehicles is a part of our energy future. I think we need to be really careful about how quickly we do that, and especially when there are challenges to the way our businesses are functioning right now, and especially in rural communities, whether or not we have the infrastructure for such a transition. I think moving to a transportation system that has less emissions in the long run is a great idea. But what tends to happen with big ideas in Sacramento, again, is that communities like ours get left behind. We want to make sure that I want to make sure that when I'm in the Senate, when we have initiatives like this that are going through the state, that they make sense for this district as well. If we have this mandate, for example, we need to make sure that we're building EV charging infrastructure throughout this district, which is challenging here. It's even more challenging in the Eastern Sierra, where towns are 40 miles apart. So we just need to be thoughtful about the way we manage these changes to our economy. Reducing emissions is an important thing that we need to do in the long run. But like everything, we need to make sure that our district and the folks who are the working families who are on the ground here in the foothills in the Eastern Sierra aren't the ones that are overly burdened by these big statewide initiatives. And I certainly want to fight that fight and ensure that throughout these policy processes, the interests of working families in District 4 are met.
We're trying to get to as many wide-ranging topics as possible this evening. Next one is in regards to California being in the midst of a multi-year drought. How do you think the state should respond?
So that's a great question. I mean, we have a lot of challenges with our water system as a whole. I think most projections are that we're going to be going into another drought year next year, and things are getting drier and drier. What we need to do first and foremost is shore up our water system. From ensuring that we have adequate storage to hardening the infrastructure. We need every drop to count. So if that means preventing leakage and inefficiencies in the water transmission system, if that means investing in stormwater capture or new water recycling programs, or desalinization, all of these ways that we can both increase supply and maintain our system. Something that I'm really interested in looking at, broadly speaking, is mechanisms to decrease evaporation in the water system, which I think is something that we have all but ignored, but we know we can have a pretty significant reduction in water use doing that. One project that's really exciting me in this district is a pilot project that the Turlock Irrigation District is doing in this district around solar canals. That is solar panels covering water canals. So in addition to finding new space to generate clean electricity, we're also preventing some amount of evaporation on these canals. And I love this because it's an idea that is connecting new technology with trying to solve a lot of different goals, and both making our energy needs and saving water. And those are the type of things that we want to keep investing in.
Let's switch over to education, specifically in regards to K-12 education and the system in the state of California. Are there any related issues that you're keeping a close eye on?
One of the things that I care about the most when I talk about education is early childhood education. So even before K to 12, and I think that includes access to childcare. It includes formal classes before kindergarten, after school programs, before school programs. In much of this district, our students are behind reading level. A majority of our students are behind reading level by the third grade. And by that point, it gets harder and harder to get students caught back up. When thinking about our school system, I think that the biggest kind of underinvestment that we have is in those first 5 years, and we want to make sure that we're helping our parents, helping our students, helping our teachers keep students on the right path. Beyond that, I think I really want to add more career and technical education to even middle school and high school. We talk about the workforce challenges that we're facing right now. There are many businesses that can't find the workers, particularly the more skilled jobs. We need to be thinking again. This is a challenge that we're not 2 years away from meeting all of our workforce needs. We're 10 years away. So we need to be thinking about what are the jobs that we're going to need to be filled when folks are entering the workforce. And if that means helping someone who is in the 6th grade right now, learn to code or, get on that path to going into a trade school, or, traditional paths to college, we need to be as thoughtful and intentional as possible about making sure that we're creating the workforce of the future.
Shifting over from education now to crime, on the issue of crime in California, are there any specific state initiatives that you feel are either working or not working?
Yeah, I think we need to do a better job investing in our police, but also making sure that they have the resources allocated to fighting the worst crime. Something that I'm really proud of is a program in Modesto where we've been able to, working with the police and with the city and with community and interests, been able to establish a couple of new kind of sub-departments to work, one directly to homeless outreach and one that's called HEART and one called CHAT that is for reaching out to people having mental health crises. This allows more time for sworn officers to be spent on the beat and working to solve some of the more serious crimes that are going on in our communities. This idea of alternative response, has a lot of advantages. One, folks who have a little bit more training and interest in working with mental health challenges that have access to resources that they can connect people with, can help community members who are either homeless or having mental health challenges, help get them the resources that they need to potentially move off the path that might have led them towards crime. I think the education strategy that I mentioned a second ago of making sure that we're investing as early and often as possible and making sure our students have a great education, and particularly one that's going to connect them with a job. One of the best things that we can do to keep lower crime is to make sure that there are as many jobs as possible that folks have. But all of that to be said, there's a lot we can do to decrease the amount of people that are on the path to crime, but we also need to have resources for our police to hold criminals accountable.
We are talking with Tim Robertson during this first segment of the California Senate District 4 Forum. It's rapid-fire questions during this part of the forum right now. Final question here for you this evening is we've touched on a number of topics. If elected as California Senator, what would you say is your number one priority?
We've talked about it a lot. It is developing the economy and developing the workforce, making sure that working families in this district have a fair shake. Sacramento has been underrepresenting this district for a very long time, really in every corner of it. In each of the 13 counties, I've met with voters, and they tell me that they feel unheard in Sacramento. And that isn't just an arbitrary thing. It manifests itself in regulations that make it harder to run businesses, in this idea that grants for community development are all but inaccessible to rural communities, and folks don't feel as though they're really a part of the political process. I want to focus on those issues, making sure that we're creating an economic environment for our businesses and our working families to succeed, as well as working on wildfire mitigation and hardening our water system. But the broad thing that we want to do is help bring people together and really focus on the challenges that our communities are facing and how to connect the policies that are going through in Sacramento to the experiences of the people in this district that are having a hard time right now. And I think that that I really want to work with folks from across party lines and individuals and hear as much as I can. I've been doing this for this whole campaign, learning more and more about the challenges folks are facing so that we can be in Sacramento on day one, making sure that we're involved in the public policy process and our residents, our businesses, and our local agencies in Senate District 4 don't continue to get the short end of the stick. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far to that effect, and I'm really excited to be the state senator representing all the people of District 4.
Well, Tim Robertson, I appreciate you answering all those questions. I'll now offer 3 minutes for closing comments.
Well, thank you again, BJ. This has been a whole lot of fun. Again, my name is Tim Robertson. I am your candidate for California State Senate in District 4, and I want to represent everyone in this district. I have spent the last many years of my career trying to fight through some of the partisan challenges that we face getting policies passed while working to improve the lives of working people. I've done that at city council level, at school board level, at county boards of supervisors in Sacramento, even in DC sometimes. And my goal, what I want to do for this district and these people and the people of District 4 is try to bring folks together. Like if we continue to be divided as we are in many parts of the country, it gets much harder to do all of those things that we talked about, going to Sacramento and earning our share and demanding our fair share for this district. That's why I want to be really communicative. I want to listen and make sure that we have a two-way communication, not just from my office as a state senator and all of the localities in this district, but from this district and Sacramento as well, to make sure that we're organizing ourselves to make sure that our voice is heard. This is what it's about for me. It's about representation. It's about bringing people together and finding common ground. The really cool thing about this district is that it's about a third Democrat, it's about a third independent, and like a little bit more than a third Republican. But as much as I've been talking to folks at the door, in their communities, and listening to folks, we talk about when we're talking about the goals that we have, how we want to improve people's lives, how we want better jobs, better access to health care, a better environment for small businesses to succeed. Those partisan differences start to fade away. And that's something that is really exciting to me, because I think that, as a moderate who wants to represent this moderate district, I think we have a really amazing opportunity to get a whole lot done together and bring a lot of resources to this district so that we can both encourage new business development, new job development, new housing development, new transportation and infrastructure development, all of these things that everybody in this district knows that we need. And I have the experience doing that. And it has not gone unnoticed. I'm proud to share that I have endorsements from police, from firefighters, from state firefighters, CAL FIRE firefighters, doctors, teachers, nurses, attorneys, you name it. We've got the full spectrum of folks that want to see me as the state senator in Sacramento. And as I continue to talk to voters in this district, including those that are listening right now, I hope to earn your support as well, because I think if we work on all of this together, we're going to have a really good opportunity to improve our lives. Thank you very much.
We thank Tim Robertson for joining us during the first part of our candidates forum this evening, featuring the California Senate District 4 race. I'm BJ Hansen, your host. We'll be back in just a minute with the second part of the forum, featuring Marie Alvarado Gill. And we welcome you back to the Clark Broadcasting Candidates Forum, featuring the Senate District 4 race on today's program. As I mentioned during the first part, as part of redistricting, the new Senate District 4 seat covers all or parts of the counties of Tuolumne, Calaveras, Mono, Alpine, Inyo, Stanislaus, Nevada, Placer, El Dorado, Amador, Merced, and Madera. The Motherlode area has been represented by Republicans in the California Senate over recent decades, but next year it will be a Democrat as the top two vote getters in the June primary were Tim Robertson and Marie Alvarado Gill. During the first part of the program, we heard from Tim Robertson, and we now have Marie Alvarado Gill joining us in studio. So Marie Alvarado Gill, here's the opportunity for opening comments.
Well, hello there, Motherlode. This is Marie Alvarado Gill, your candidate for State Senate District 4, and thank you, BJ, for having me here. I'll tell you, life is never boring here in Senate District 4. If it wasn't for a raccoon underneath my house or the grandbaby keeping me up all last night and having some, problems with those new teeth coming in, I would be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed here with you. But I just want to welcome all the listeners and say hello. Again, my name is Marie Alvarado Gill, and I'm coming to you from Jackson in Amador County. That's right. I'm a local candidate for Senate District 4, looking to represent the values of our community and those nice hometown spirit that we all know and love. Now, coming into politics was not the plan for me. I raised 3 kids here in California, born and raised. I've been successful in opening several programs for kids, including charter schools and alternative schools. I am an advocate for victims of crimes and have worked tirelessly for 25 years to help keep criminals behind bars and to help families and victims heal from domestic violence, from child abuse. And now as an educator, I work as a state commissioner for special education to help support and advocate and be the voice for some of our most vulnerable here in California. So my experience has brought me now to serve Senate District 4 as your next Senate candidate. And so let me tell you a little bit about why I think I'm the best candidate for you. So one, I do not subscribe to the far left or the far right. Yes, I'm a Democrat, and there's 2 Democrats in this race. So a lot of our friends are asking, well, how do I vote for a Democrat when I don't subscribe to that party either? Well, my experience tells me this. We want somebody who represents our values. We want somebody who listens before they lead. And we want somebody who has walked in our boots, that has rolled in our wheelchair, and understands our way of life. So that is me, Marie Alvarado Gill, coming to you from the Motherlode. So I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about the issues. BJ, let's hit it.
Sounds good. Well, my first question this evening is in regards to the Sierra Nevada and the foothill communities being among the highest for fire risk in the state. From a perspective of a state senator, what do you think can be done for this region to become more fire resilient?
Well, I think first of all, we need to talk about it in a real way. The rural communities have not had a voice in Sacramento in decades. We know that there's a party supermajority in the Democratic Party, which means our rural communities typically get left out of policy, sound policy, and solutions. Now, I'll tell you, me and my family, we've been evacuated twice in the last 2 years, both with the Caldor fire and with the Electra fire. So to me and to my neighbors, this is something that we talk about all the time. And the one thing I love about the Motherlode community is when crisis comes, we all pull up our trucks, we load them up, we help our neighbors, and we get the heck out of there. So the main thing that I hear from my constituents is, one, what's going to happen, Marie, with the California Fair Plan? Now, I call it the not so fair plan because I'm also on it, and I know that it's thousands of dollars every year that we're paying for fire insurance on our homes. So I have a couple ideas here. So one, I do believe that the state is going into a direction of overhauling our wildfire systems, right? So I do believe that, we're looking more at prescribed burns. I trust our ancestors, our rural communities, our ranchers that have done this for a long time, and we need to have more prescribed burns. But we also have to acknowledge that drought and climate change have increased the frequency, and they've also increased the severity of these wildfires. Now, just last week, I came out of Mariposa County and talked to some of our constituents that lost their homes in the Oak Fire. So this is very real, and we must go to Sacramento, have a voice like mine that is strong, that says a successful plan cannot be achieved with a one-size-fits-all. So let me tell you why. Because Now, my property, I butt up to state lands, all right? Some of you have federal lands next to you, tribal lands. Everyone's doing something different. We have to have more coordination and local-driven solutions to make this happen. Now, a lot of my constituents are saying, Marie, how are you going to put more money back into my
I'm
pocket?
going to interrupt you on that next question,
All
too.
right.
I give 2 minutes to each of these questions, and out of fairness to Tim Robertson as well. So appreciate your answer. Next thing, I want to move over to the topic of homelessness. It's an issue all across this district, whether it be the foothills or the valley. What do you feel is the best approach to address the issue of homelessness?
Well, I think, first of all, homelessness in the rural communities looks different than it does in Stanislaus, where my opponent is from. So when I talk to our sheriff and I talk to our local businesses, unfortunately, many of the homeless that we have right here in our community were born and raised in this community and have, for whatever reason, fallen into alcoholism or drug abuse. These are our veterans. These are our neighbors that have fallen on hard times. We know that inflation has continued to drive the cost of housing, gas, and even food. I mean, my son lives in Las Vegas, and he loves when I send him a chicken pot pie from out here, and it used to cost me $20 to buy that chicken pot pie. And now, guess what, BJ? It cost me almost $40 to send him a chicken pot pie. Well, I'd rather send him a ticket and have him come home and I can cook for him. But this is the main thing. We're living paycheck to paycheck. The threat of economic disaster with just a sudden job loss or car repairs or illness or even divorce, this is what's making the difference between having a home and being homeless. And so for me, I look at 2 things. One, I want to look at expanding access to mental health crisis, especially here in the rural communities where we don't have a lot of access to health care. I want to make sure that we're attracting a workforce that can come and help support us here in these rural communities. Now, I grew up in a family where you don't talk about mental health, right? It's kind of that taboo. But the reality is this pandemic opened up a Pandora's box in that we now have real life kitchen table issues, and healthcare, mental health, and trauma is one of the biggest ones. We see it in our schools with our kids. We see it with our adults. And the last thing that I'm looking at is tiered interventions that includes more funding for our emergency services so we can help those women and families and veterans that have fallen on hard times.
You know, moving from homelessness to housing in general, do you feel there are specific things that should be done to make it easier to build more housing in the state of California?
Well, absolutely. I think, again, our state has had a voice in Sacramento that represents the coastal elite, that represents those far left progressive values that don't always resonate with us here in the rural communities in the Sierras. So for me, this notion of overreach from the state, from the government is very real. And so for us to build here in the rural communities, there's so much red tape, so much bureaucracy that it makes it cost prohibitive. Who wants to come and build in the rural communities if they can't make a profit? If their bottom line, the cost of lumber and labor is more than the cost of what they're going to sell the home for. So that's a real issue for us. Now, the other thing that concerns me, especially here in our area, is the increase in number of second homes, the Airbnbs, the short-term rentals that are essentially making it more difficult for us who live here in the Sierras and work here and run a business to be able to pay rent or even buy a home. So I'll tell you, my husband and I have 6 kids between us. I brought 3 to the marriage. He brought 3 to the marriage, all from 18 to 26, BJ. And I'll tell you, not a single one of them can afford to live on their own. They all live at home. Well, not all with me, thank God, but some with in-laws, some with grandparents. But I'll tell you, this is not a unique story. We are seeing this more and more with our young people, that it's just not the same California where you and I grew up. That California dream is almost non-existent because the cost of housing, the cost of gas, the cost of food has made it so difficult.
On a related topic, what are your observations about the local economic health of the district, and are there things that the state can do to help?
One of the reasons that I call this home is because I can go downtown to my favorite restaurant, shop at my favorite boutique, and I know the owners, I know the chefs, they know me. We can have real conversations. This part of California carries the history, that rich history that attracts so many tourists. People from all over the world come to Gold Rush Country. People come to experience our hometown hospitality, to taste some of the most wonderful food and wine in our region, or to even just get away from all the noise and the traffic of the Bay Area and, enjoy our scenery, our hiking and camping. So for me, I want to boost, and this is a priority for me, boost our economic success in our small businesses. Now, I've been endorsed by our California chambers, local chambers, and our National Small Business Alliance. Why? Because they know that I have experience in running businesses. I have experience in building something from the ground up, and I truly understand what local values and local control mean. So for me, this means, again, getting rid of this one-size-fits-all overreach from Sacramento and helping to support those small town values that attract our tourism, that attract people that want to come and take care of and caretake and nurture our community, not to bring excess crime, not to bring that crazy fentanyl that's killing our kids, but to really enjoy the California that we know and we love.
Talking with Marie Alvarado-Gil during the second portion of our candidates forum today, focusing on the Senate District 4 race. Marie Alvarado-Gil, next question is in regards to high gas prices and inflation. Are there any actions you feel could be done in response to it?
Oh, BJ, do not get me started on this, because this is one of the areas that makes me so angry. And let me tell you why. One, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. We've got a surplus of millions of dollars sitting in the Capitol. And here we are at the pump paying in excess of $7 to fill our tank. I mean, I don't remember a time where it cost me over $100 to fill my tank. And I know that we are feeling it, not only in my household, but all throughout Senate District 4. Do you know that our governor, he called a special session for December 5th this year? He called a special session to vote on a windfall tax on our petrol industry. What does that mean? That means that on December 5th, whoever wins this office, and I'm aiming that it's going to be me, is going to be taking their very first vote to vote on a windfall tax on the petrol. So all of us know, the wool's gone. It's not in front of my eyes. What does this tell me? That when we add taxes to our businesses, even to oil, who pays the cost? The consumer, BJ. So I am looking at this as being one of the most important votes of me going into office December 5th. Now, my opponent has already said he supports the gas tax. He's already said that he's going to vote along party lines. Now, me, I've said it over and over again. I am here to advocate to repeal that gas tax. The state does not need that money from us. Our families, our communities, our businesses need that relief right away. And mind you, this is not relief in a $200 rebate check or a $1,000 rebate check or whatever the far liberals have been saying. I haven't seen anything come in the mail, but the reality is there is a lot of money in Sacramento, and that Sacramento money belongs to the people, not to the governor and not to the party.
What's your opinion about the governor's directive to phase out new gas-powered cars by 2035, and do you think that's realistic?
Well, this is where I've gotten in trouble, BJ, because I've used words like ridiculous, and I was told I need to soften up there a little bit. So let me give you my softer response. I still think it's a really bad idea. This is why. One, electric vehicles are, it's an ambitious goal. I get it, but I'm going to tell you, I don't see us hauling logs. I don't see us moving our agricultural products with electric vehicles. I don't see people coming to Yosemite to disconnect from the Bay Area with a whole row of these little robot electronic chargers. I just don't see it happening. And I started having these conversations back when we were running temperatures of 115 up here in the Sierras. And do you remember that, BJ, when we had the rolling blackouts? Well, if we don't have a secure grid for even those hot days, how are we going to hold up on these electronic vehicles? Now, I'll tell you another thing. The average cost of an electronic vehicle is about $66,000. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd rather have a new truck that I can rely on, especially in the weather here in the Sierra, than an electronic vehicle. So for me, electronic vehicles are good for our Bay Areas or our coastal elite. They're not good for Senate District 4.
Switching over to the issue of water and California being in the midst of a multi-year drought, how do you feel the state should respond?
Yeah, this is that argument that's been happening for over 100 years. And, I'll be really honest with you. I don't have a quick fix for this, and I don't think anybody does. And anybody who says that is just pulling the wool in front of your eyes once again. So I think the one thing for me is really we need to increase our water supply through less regulation. We need to make sure that, and this is what I have on my website, and I've said this from the beginning, we need to make sure that we're protecting our water resources, increasing that water storage. Do you know that in Senate District 4, we have some of the most coveted reservoirs for the whole state? Hetch Hetchy, Don Pedro, we've just, Dos Melones down the street. Now, what does that tell you? That tells me that Senate District 4 has some of the most richest resources in California. Now, as a state senator, we have 13 counties in Senate District 4. That's about a fourth of the counties in California. To me, that's a lot of power, because what that means is I'm going to be able to work not only with our local water districts, but with 13 different county boards of supervisors, over 25 mayors of our cities to come to consensus to protect our resources and to bring real solutions to Senate District 4. Now, we've got to balance this. We've got to balance it to make sure that we are not taking money away from our farmers and our ranchers, because honestly, we need water for food. That is life. And life for humans needs to be number one. Now, the second thing is we cannot leave our kids and our grandkids in this situation that we've been in now for over 100 years. So I aim to make real solutions and build appointments on two boards. We've got the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, which covers 9 counties in Senate District 4, and we've got the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, which covers 6 counties. So if we can get local voices, ranchers and farmers and business owners on those boards, we're going to have some real local solutions.
Switching over to education next, specifically the K-12 education system, how do you feel that it's doing, and are there any related issues that you're keeping a close eye on?
Right. So, BJ, this is one of the issues where me and my opponent really differ. Now, I raised 3 kids. 2 of my kids, I was blessed with 2 kids with special needs. And I understood very early when they were growing up that they all learned very differently. And I became an advocate for my kids and eventually for all kids across California in ensuring that our public education system was meeting the needs of all of our kids. Now, let me tell you, California is 47 of 50 states in terms of performance and spending on public education. Half of our general funds here in California go to education, and we're some of the worst performing in the nation. Now, what does that tell you? That tells me that we've got a lot of work to do, and this is not simply about throwing money at the wall and seeing what sticks. This is about overhauling our public education system. Now, in 1992, we had a savior in the Charter School Act of 1992. What that allowed us to do is allow parents and teachers and the community to build an alternative public school model in charter schools. And that's what I do. I've grown my career to open 3 successful charter schools that serve predominantly low-income kids. And I'll tell you, my charter schools have won awards and accolades at the state level. On the other hand, I'm also a chairperson for Chart House Public Schools, which is a school where my daughter graduated from that I helped to open in 2015. And this school predominantly serves kids with special needs in a performing arts environment, a place where they can be expressive, where they can feel successful. And for me, I know that parents partnering with teachers and their community can bring the best public alternatives for their kids, and that's what I support.
And Marie Alvarado-Gil, what is your opinion on the issue of crime in California, and are there any specific state initiatives either working or not working?
Yeah, so this for me is not political, BJ. This is very personal. So early early on in my career, I was victimized by domestic violence in a very harmful way. And I took that experience to turn things around in my life, being a single mom, raising my little guys. And I went to work for a nonprofit called Community Violence Solutions. And with that, not only was I part of running the crisis calls every day, working with women, working with children, but I helped to build the very first children's interview center in Contra Costa County. And that was the very first place that children could come and tell their stories. They can tell their stories to the DA, to social services, to police detectives, to ensure that the prosecution of perpetrators of some of our most vulnerable citizens of this community, that we could follow through. So for me, prosecution and consequence is of utmost importance because I've seen it tear families apart. I've seen it destroy kids' families. I've seen it create this pattern of poverty and domestic violence, alcoholism, and drug abuse in families. And we must have consequences that keep perpetrators in jail and protect our victims. Now, Proposition 47 and Proposition 57 are the two pieces of legislation that I'm most concerned about and most angry about. One is because we're consistently seeing the loopholes being opened and spread wide and allowing violent criminals to come out of jail and continue to fall as predators on our victims in our communities. Now, a clear example was Sacramento. The biggest mass murder in Sacramento was perpetrated by a criminal that was let out on one of those loopholes, BJ. So this makes me angry.
Well, I appreciate you answering all the questions here. The final question I have during this part of the forum is, we've touched on a number of topics. If you are elected California Senator, what would you identify as your number one priority?
All right, well, let me cool down a little bit. You got me all heated up here. So, I would say the number one priority for me is this. I believe that Senate District 4 has such a diversity of opinions, of politics, of ideologies, and that fighting has created a big divide. We've got the machine on the far left, and we've got the establishment on the far right. But did you know, BJ, that over 61% of voters really do not subscribe to either the far left or the far right? And that's who I represent. I am not endorsed by the Democratic Party. I am a pragmatic free thinker. I think for myself. There's no strings attached to me. I'm not a political climber. I am here because I love California. I want to see my kids and my grandkids and your grandkids thrive in the state that I love, that I was born and raised. And I know that for the longest time, if you don't subscribe to one of those far divisive areas, your voice is not heard. Where I'm here to tell you that I'm that voice, and my commitment to the voters is to always represent you, is to always be accessible to you and to be accountable. I'm not serving you. You vote me out. But if you want somebody that can give you that opportunity to bring that middle ground, be a problem solver, then that is my number one priority. Now, we talked a lot about the issues, BJ, and I know that we can all agree that inflation and crime and wildfire prevention is very important, and that's going to be part of my legislative package. But I'm the type of leader that believes in unifying, not separating. I've got endorsements from both sides of the aisle. I've got local Republican leadership. I've got local Democratic leadership. And frankly, I've got a lot of no party preference that just want to see a rational problem solver, pragmatic person in Sacramento.
We've been hearing from Marie Alvarado Gil during the second part of the Candidates Forum for Senate District 4. Earlier, we heard from Tim Robertson. Marie Alvarado Gil, there's time now for some closing comments.
Great. Well, BJ, I'm glad we had the chance to do this. Hopefully I'll be able to come back and talk with some of your listeners. But, I just want to say this here. Again, my name is Marie Alvarado Gil, your candidate for State Senate District 4. I'm your common sense problem solver candidate. My commitment is to being responsible and open and inclusive to all of our constituents. I rely on the science and the data, particularly when I'm looking at the crime rates continuing to climb. I do not subscribe to rigid ideologies. My goal is to develop sound policy that helps to protect victims over criminals. Sound policy that protects our rural communities over our coastal elite communities. Sound policy that helps to elevate our agricultural and business production and distribution to help ensure that our economy is sound. Now, I know that Californians need someone who is fiscally responsible. I have a proven history of building businesses, opening schools, opening programs that are still in existence 20, 25 years later. My background in healthcare and education and just practical common sense shows that I am the candidate to represent Senate District 4. I have not wavered on who I am through the primaries. I have not changed my message to help boost special interest or to help get more money from the parties. That's not who I am. I'm just like you. I'm just like my community members. I am part of the people for the rest of us, or the party for the rest of us, if you will, those who have common sense, those who believe our approach is the best way to address some of the most complex issues, the stable growing budget here in California, a well-educated group of young people that qualify for our next wave of exciting jobs, solutions to homelessness that are real and compassionate, solutions for our aging infrastructure, which includes our schools and our downtown businesses and housing costs, and last but not least, crime. We have to turn around crime. We cannot continue to fall victims. We cannot continue to read stories and headlines about whole families being kidnapped at gunpoint in daylight and being murdered because we do not have strict enough laws, or we have so many loopholes in our laws that criminals have more rights than our victims. So, BJ, that's what I'm about. I hope that your listeners will call in, ask some more questions, and you'll have me back for another show. But until then, thank you, Mother Lode. Have a great day, and I'll see you at the finish line.
Well, thank you, Maria Alvarado-Gil, for coming in and answering those questions. We also thank Tim Robertson, who was on during the first segment of today's forum. I'm BJ Hansen. I was your host. Programming note, coming up tomorrow night at 6 p.m. is a chance to hear from the congressional candidates, Republican Tom McClintock and Democratic challenger Mike Barkley. We'll see you then.